Hello, brothers and sisters. I wanted to talk to y'all about something interesting, and it is the the idea of language. Okay, we discussed this in 1 Corinthians chapter 14, but now we're going to look at it in more of a, I guess you could say, scientific way. So, what is language? Language. So we'll use this word language up here to demonstrate what we're talking about. So this is a chain of letters. We have up here, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. We have 8 letters right here, right? Language. So we have 8 letters. And because we have 8 letters, we know that there's 26 letters in the alphabet. A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J, K, L, M, N, O, P, Q, R, S, T, U, V, W, X, Y, Z. And we also study Hebrew. Now that's an English alphabet, but here we study some Hebrew letters and we study some Greek letters as well, along with, sometimes we might discuss Latin words. I'm pretty sure this lingua is probably a Latin word. This probably comes from lingua, where we get our word language, and in the English they call that tongue, right? So we have alpha, beta, gamma, delta, epsilon, zeta, eta, theta, iota, kappa, lambda, mu, nu, xi, omicron, pi, rho, sigma, tau, upsilon, phi, chi, psi, omega. And that's I believe 24 letters there. And then in the Hebrew there's 24 letters, which is aleph, bet, vet, gimel, dalet, hey, Vav, Zayin, Chet, Tet, Yod, Kaf, Kaf, Lamed, Mem, Nun, Samek, Ayin, Pei, Fei, Zadi, Kuf, Resh, Shin, Sin, Tav. And they just named their letters, but their letters are just like our letters, but they just gave them big names, like Aleph is actually just Ah, and Alpha is actually just Ah, right? And Bet is just Ba. And beta is B, just like our B in the English. We just call it a B, but that's a name too, right? It sounds more like B-E-E, B, or an A sounds more like an A-Y-E, right? But we have an A, or an A, or a B. So the point is that that's like the basic constituents. I had a brother, he explained to me how when he began to teach music, he realized that he didn't know anything about music. So if you learn about like the circle of fifths, and how if using a circle of fifths, you can actually take that concept and on any instrument that's not like a bass clef, I guess, but I don't really know a lot about bass instruments and how that works. But if you take the circle of fifths, you can actually plot out on each scale the notes that will actually sound good. So it's kind of the same concept with language. So we're going to get back to what we were saying. Now, the reason I brought that up about the alphabets from Hebrew, Greek, or English is that you have a certain number of possibilities, and that's what they learned about language whenever they tried to look at it for what it is. Like, what is language? How does it work? They came down to probabilities. So we have 8 letters here, and in each one of these 8 places, you have 26 possibilities, right? A, B, C, D, E, F, G. There's 26 letters. So in each one of these places, you have 26 possibilities that could have gone here. See? So you would actually say 26 times 26 times 26 times 26 times 26. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 times 26 times 26 6, 7 times 26. So to even be writing this word language up here, I mean, just the possibility of us even having a conversation on this is pretty extraordinary. Out of the great sea of words, how many words do you think there are? You know, from Russian, Chinese, Latin, English, French, Spanish, Italian. So to even light upon a word, it's just pretty. It's extraordinarily like just like to come to this, and it shows you how intelligence works. Okay, and this is a pretty short word, so when you get to bigger words, you see that like there's a lot slimmer chance, I guess, to get to that. So and when you really break language down like this, it becomes really confusing, because it shows us that we use language so naturally that we don't realize the extremely slim possibilities of the things that we say. Like there's and this could serve to show us the difference between what is trivial and what is actually deep, because people always say like hi, right? Hi, how you doing? And you know, people might say hi or what's up? You know, that they might use all of this trivial language just to make it through the day, or would you like a cup of coffee? And we know all of the common sayings, right? But I mean, even those, if you really boil them down mathematically, are incredible. There's an interesting other aspect of this, and that's called Shannon information. So, and I like an analogy that William Dembski used, and this is the kind of people that I learned this from, is that one day Bill Gates called Michelangelo, you know, the big sculptor person, and he told him that he needed a sculpture of Zeus in his living room. So Michelangelo shows up, and he gives him a big block of marble, and just sets it in his living room. You know, they bring it in on a lift and set it in his living room, and he says, Michelangelo is in this big block somewhere, so just go ahead and pay me $100,000 like we agreed to, and you can just be comfortable knowing that Michelangelo is in this big block of marbles, or sorry, that Zeus is in this big block of marbles somewhere. Just you can see that he's in there, and Bill Gates actually says, okay, well, $100,000, that's a lot of money, so I'm going to give you this CD, and you can take this CD, and on the CD is Windows 11. You just have to look at it and realize that those pits are organized in there for the binary code, the ones and zeros that are put in those little pits on the CD. They're in there. You just have to look and imagine where it's at. So you can get the feel of what I'm saying, because that's the thing. Yes, the Zeus would be in there if you were Michelangelo and you knew how to carve them out, right? Or if you knew how to organize the pits onto that CD or that DVD or that little CD-ROM. If you knew how to organize the pits, you would have Microsoft 11. But so it's just an interesting analogy of what we're doing here, because there's so many possibilities of language in this great pool. And then when we actually pull out some letters and put up here, then we have a pattern recognition. So the reason language makes sense is because we detect a pattern in it. So now let's use Shannon information, okay, which would be like that block of marble, or like that empty CD that doesn't have the pits organized yet, or the block that doesn't have it organized yet, right? So we can take these same letters and we can put them in a different arrangement, like G, N, A, L, A, G, E, U. So right here we have 8 letters again. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So this is actually the same probability as this up here. It would be 26 times 26 times 26 times 26 times 26 times 26 times 26. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 times 26, right? So I don't know what that is, but it's a pretty big number. But this is Shannon information, because it's not telling us anything. But this right here, this is information, but we have a pattern. We have a pattern detection. This is more like having Michelangelo. This is like having Zeus cut out of that big block of marble. See? So if we had this greater pool of information, it would just be nothing yet, right? It's like if you said to me, you said, "What's the weather like outside?" And I just sit there and I'm like, not saying anything. You don't know. But if I say, "It looks like it may storm," and then you could go outside at that point, and maybe it's a bright sunny day, and you say, "Why did he say it's going to storm? It doesn't look like it's going to storm." Or maybe you go outside and you see that there's a really bad big cloud with lightning, and maybe you see a little tornado coming, right? So you're like, "Oh man, he's right, it's going to storm." So what we do when we use language is we narrow down I'm trying to think of the proper word, the confusion, right? So if you don't know what the weather's going to be like outside, you're confused, or there's kind of chaos, right? You don't have any order yet for slimming that down. So the way that you narrow that down is that you give someone some information. You say, "It looks like it could rain," and I looked on the weather forecast, and it said that we have some bad weather that's moving in, and that it could just barely miss us, but that we should also possibly be prepared because we could catch the edge of the storm. So now we have something to go off. Now we could narrow things down better. We know how to prepare ourselves. We know how to chisel away some of that marble off of that big block of stone, or we start organizing the pits into that CD, and now we're narrowing things down to get towards an end that we have in mind, or to I want to say get rid of chance, right? Because now, and that was William Dembski's book. It was called Eliminating Chance Through Small Probabilities. So out of all the chances of things that I could have said, we narrowed it down. And this is an event right here, because this is realizing an organization or a pattern that we're familiar with. Nemo decided to come in here and join me. Get back, Nemo. Go on. Go out of here for now. It's funny, one video it was Zella, the next video it was Josiah. Now this video, it's Nemo. Maybe I need to just set up some chairs out here for a little classroom, right? So, if you had a whole entire report, let's say you had a report, and this report is 5,000 words long. You have a report, it's 5,000 words long. So who knows how many letters it has, right? Well, if you disorganize that whole thing, that would be Shannon information. But it would still be portraying the 5,000 possibilities, right? So, but once you organize it, then you have the pattern detection, and that's the way that we know that something has been designed versus just like it's like if someone, I like the examples that William Dembski and Stephen Meyer use. They use the example of Mount Rushmore. If you went to Mount Rushmore and you said, look what wind and erosion has done to the side of this mountain. This is incredible. Wind and erosion has made a marvelous tourist attraction. Your friend would look at you and be like, are you joking? This was not made by wind and erosion. Somebody made this, right? An intelligence. And that's what we're really getting at here. And that's what's so interesting about these books that people have made regarding intelligence and information, and the recognition that has been found in biology. And they call it deoxyribonucleic acid. And it takes RNA and an RNA polymerase to be able to do cell division, or to be able to split a cell and make a cell actually work. It takes an RNA polymerase and it takes the DNA, and that's a chicken and the egg argument. So we'll get to that in a second. So I wanted to give you those examples again. So if you look at Mount Rushmore, you don't say, look at what wind and erosion has done. You say, man, someone worked hard to get that, because you can tell that was from somebody's mind, right? That was an intelligent designer working on Mount Rushmore. If you look at a mountain, if you look at I had another example, and then I lost it. The Rosetta Stone. They use the Rosetta Stone as an example, which is really awesome. You say, look at what wind and erosion did to this rock. Someone would say, I think he's missing a big picture idea of how language could get on the rock. See, And that's interesting too, because no one signed the Rosetta Stone. So no one knows who made the Rosetta Stone. There's not a name etched on there that says Billy Bob from Egypt made this Rosetta Stone with these 3 languages on it. I think it was 3 languages. But you can tell by looking at it that it was an intelligent person, and it was the product of a mind. That's what language is. Language is the product of mind, and that's what we see art is, that art is the product of mind. And this is the same thing that they used to be what scientists went off of. Like a big one, he wrote more theology than he did science, was, I can't remember his name, the guy who discovered gravity. I can't think of it. Newton, right? Yeah, I'm sorry, I can't think of his name. I think it's Newton right now, but for some reason it's escaping me. So, and then you have Albert Einstein, and he was the one who discovered the idea that this large mass like Earth, or a large mass like the Sun, was literally bending space in, and so Newton, he discovered that, like, the reason the moon is the distance it is from the Earth is because of its size. So the size of the Earth, the size of the Sun, and the size of the moon, and the gravity that each one of those are exerting is the reason that the distances are the way that they are. But if I'm not mistaken, it was Albert Einstein who took that a step further, and he realized that the mass of an object is actually bending space around it. And that's why they use that example of like a blanket, and they'll have like a ball on the blanket, and they'll show you like the way that it rolls around on the blanket. And that's the analogy they use. But a massive object like the sun is actually bending this large amount of space around it, and then we're inside of that big blanket that the sun's bending, and because of the mass of Mercury, the mass of Venus, the mass of Earth, that's determining like the distance from the other objects. And I'm not smart enough to be having this conversation with y'all. I should probably name the video. I'm not smart enough to have this conversation. I'm going to name it. But the reason I bring that up is because the orders of the cosmos and the orders of the ecology, I think it might, I'm not sure if that's the right word, the ecosystem, the order of the ecosystem and the order of the cosmos, and the orders that we see everywhere. Not chaos. We don't see chaos everywhere. We see order everywhere. And sometimes things keep chaotic, but most of the time we see when the DNA of life are in the atoms with the electrons, protons, neutrons, and then there's all the things that those are made out of, like fermions and leptons and quarks and all of this other this subatomic particles. We see orders. We see and within the human intelligence, we see what on Earth is the highest order of intelligence that we find because of the use of language we have, and the use of art, and just the way that we can completely do these things that are completely outside of any other thing we see in nature. For example, a dung beetle has the capacity to make a dung ball, and even the Egyptians said that was a picture of the way that their sun god Ra pushed the sun through space. And I've used that as an analogy with Paul, the way he says all of his accolades were dung. And that's what men do. They put their dung out in front of everybody, the things that stink to God, to show themselves better, right? And even the bee can create these 120-degree angles and create hexagons to put their honey in, or to put their larva in, and they can create these amazing structures, but they don't have the desire to create the structure outside of that, which is that's what's amazing, right? Like, a bee does not want to build a human-looking house. It just wants to build its little beehive. It wants to build its honeycombs. And those are amazing inventions, but they don't decide that they want to make a Ferrari one day, or they want to make a Lamborghini, or or a boat and go a sailing. The bees went to sailing, right? So in the Bible, the word Debar actually means the bee, and Deborah means the bee, and we see that in bees they do have orders, and that's how we should order our language. Is we should order our language right, not mean, not using language like weapons and the cruelty we see on this world. Like Darwin created an idea for the aristocracy, and like the Greeks thought that the cities were the highest form of, kind of like the anthropic principle, the highest form of order that there was, and that was the culmination of the cosmos and the planets, and was the man's cities, was like the order that all of it was culminating into, which will show you why they built the pyramids and why they built the Druid stones, or Stonehenge with the Druids, and why they build all of these astronomical observatories, just like they still do. You know, they send up the Hubble telescope, and they build things according to astronomy, like the way that they use the Washington Monument, which is a large obelisk, and it's a phallic symbol, just like on the tops of steeples. And we can imagine that this goes back into antiquity, the way that they would lift up Pharaoh and say, Pharaoh's God, he's the culmination, he's the highest person at the top of this pyramid. Or they would build the Capitol with the dome on it, and then the Washington Monument, because they're saying these are the highest people, the augury, because that's where they have the inauguration, which comes from augury. So I can imagine that the root part of that's probably the same as philarguria. The love of money is the root of all evil. The love of shining, huperephano, to shine above. And they believe that, like, these charismatic people who they want to follow, like Adam or Nimrod, are these people who would have these likable personalities to where people won't just kill you. Like if I lifted myself up and said, I am God, and I have been risen from the stars, and I have star power to be y'all's God. Well, people would just kill me, right? They wouldn't want me to be a leader. But something about Trump and something about Hillary Clinton, they want to put these people up there, and they actually follow them, which is very strange, very peculiar. So what we find, as I said, and the way I got there, is that they believe that the cosmos was the culmination of all of the order in the universe, and man's cities. Man's cities was like the highest endowment, the crown, and that's what the crown represents, right? The goddess of fortresses, and the god of fortresses, the king and the queen, would wear a crown, right? They have these little ceremonies with the Roman Catholics to anoint the new king and anoint the new queen. And they have the church going through its little liturgy, and you can go and watch these online when they have a new king or a new queen, and they put them through this Roman Catholic liturgy. It's incredible. Insane. And it's incredible, and it's incredibly insane to watch this and to watch these people build these big cities and really worship them and think that it's incredible, when in fact it's actually ultra indoctrinated people, and they think that that's the poor people look at that and they think that that's good, when it's shown that rich people are honestly the most miserable people in the earth, because they can't get out of it, because now they're indoctrinated into it. They've gone to the right school, they've gone to the right church, they've gone through the right clubs, they were born to the right people, they were born to the right blood. And trust me, look into this, they do belong to the right blood, like the barons of Runnymede, the daughters of the barons of Runnymede, and being kin to the different revolutionaries and people who fought in different wars. And Darwin solidified the doctrine that it was okay because these are the highest people, they're the most evolved, right? So even though we know that evolution isn't true at all, I mean, and the way that we know that is what we were getting at with all this jazz about language, right? Is that just like a language, DNA, you have roughly 20 different possibilities at each site in an amino acid chain of proteins, which is what the DNA creates. The DNA is what has all of the instruction book. The DNA is the cookbook of the body. And the cookbook is where you go to get your recipes for making the different types of things that you need to make in any kind of creature. All creatures are made out of 4 things: A, T, G, and C. And the different combinations of that is what makes your proteins. And you have 20 are your amino acids, and then you have 20 different proteins that can be in each place. So if you took a very small amino acid chain, and 150 would be very small. We used an 8-letter word earlier, and we saw it was 26 times 26 times 26 times 26, and we have pattern detection there. So not only, it's not Shannon information, it's actually information that was in a pattern. Well, it turns out that is exactly true in all life, whether it's the simplest cell, as simplest organisms that there are. They have this basis here. Sorry if you hear Nemo chewing on his bone. He's right here beside me chewing on it. So if you took an amino acid chain 150 long, which is extremely small, an amino acid chain just 150 long, and this is what Stephen Meyer uses as an example. You have 20 times 20 times 20 times 20 times 20 times 20. You see where this is going? 150 times. But these are actually directing protein synthesis, I think is what it's called. And it's actually an order. It's not like something random is happening, right? We're not talking about Shannon information. We're talking about information with pattern recognition, and these are actually regulating life. And this is information with a purpose. And that was the big discovery. And you've heard of things about like Francis Collins and the Genome Project, and they've mapped out the human genome, and they've probably mapped out all the animal genomes. And so this is an incredible, incredible discovery. And Francis and Crick were the ones who discovered the DNA double helix. So what they discovered is that this is a exact process. This isn't what Darwin had in mind when they were explaining that things evolved. They just thought that cells were a big mass of goo. Basically, they had they called it like they called it the whole protoplasm or whatever, but that just meant to them goo, basically. So they thought that it was a big pile of goo. And then Francis and Crick in the 1950s or right in there discovered that it was actually the famous double helix. And it's so tempting, I have to do it. This is where we enter into like what we talk about with the abstract, right? Because before there was the DNA helix, which has become a famous iconic symbol in America and around the world, they had this thing that they called the caduceus. So, sorry to enter, so this is a big abstraction here, and now we're going to just fly off into left field, right? But this is incredible that some kind of crazy cosmic coincidence, we'll call it, and I don't believe in coincidences personally, but they had this symbol of this winged serpent on a pole with these wings here, and they called it the caduceus, and it was two serpents wound around a pole. And now I would direct you to the video that I just made recently called The Two Thrones. Because it's like, there's like an imprint in life that says like, worship God, do not worship man, right? God made all of these things. God made this creation. He made all of these orders. The protons, neutrons, and electrons, and the DNA double helix. God did all of that, and it's incredible. And then, as like a staple in the fact that Satan wants to look like Jesus Christ, from 2 Corinthians chapter 11, there's a reminder that God is the one who we should worship. And it's like when Jesus said, as the serpent, the Ophis, was lifted up on the pole, which was the seraph, so must the Son of Man be lifted up, that the true way to God is the way of dying, being persecuted, being hated. And that's how we should worship God, and that's how we should honor Him, and that the whole culmination of all of this is actually in this world hating us because we're simple. We're so simple that it makes people mad, and not to want money, and not to be so overly concerned with money and power and position. So it's almost like the whole concept of which way are you going to choose, right? It's like when Joshua said, choose this day which God you'll serve, the one that you're going to be hated for serving, or the one that you're going to be loved for serving. And that's what most people choose, sadly. So whenever we speak of these things, even if we don't always connect things exactly right, even one intelligence communicating to another intelligence is such an extraordinarily rare event of things that we're saying and the purposes of what we're saying, that it should send like fear through your body and through your spine to realize what we're doing as intelligent beings. I mean, and all of this technology that we have now is just taking it to like astronomical levels, that I'm filming this right now and it will take me about 40 minutes. This is about 40 minutes right now. And after this, I'm going to go and upload it onto the internet. And if 4 or 5 people watch it, that means that 4 or 5 people could possibly be seeing this at the same time. And I think about these things and I'm like, it's just beyond reckoning, and that people would use it to rip off poor people and widows and the fatherless and the strangers, and just use it for all of the wrong purposes. It's just, and like I said, when we talk about these things, we're narrowing things down. We're all out of all the possibilities of things we could be talking about. We're talking about praising God, and we're talking about worshiping God, and out of all of the large pool of information of lies and propping up lies, we're talking about glorifying God with our mouths and loving God. So that's not what most people are doing, though. They use the branding, and they make it exciting, and they make it appealing to people, and they know that because they reach such a large audience, like I just described, and maybe thousands of people are watching them at the same time. It's like Marjo said. Look up documentaries on YouTube about Marjo, Marjoe, and his mom named him that from Mary and Joseph, and she would actually smother him with a pillow, but she wouldn't kill him, obviously. And he was because she was teaching him how to rip people off like a televangelist from a very young age, and she would put a pillow over his face so she wouldn't leave marks. And he described this: you're reaching such a large audience that if I said, if you have a little bit of money, send it to me. I know God just told me someone has money in their car, and that they're supposed to not be hiding that money, and they should be sending it to use to support God's ministry. Or there's a little old lady and she has money hidden in a cookie jar or in the bathroom, and she needs to send that money to this ministry. That if you reach a large enough audience, the probability and the statistics is that someone does actually have that money in their car. I mean, who doesn't have a little bit of change in their car, right? And who doesn't have a little bit of money put in a drawer somewhere, right? So if you tell enough people that, they're going to send you that money because they think that you actually have a message from God that they should be sending you that. And you just lied, and you're reaching such a large audience if you're famous like that. Like if you're Pat Robertson and he says things like that, I've watched him. Or you're T.D. Jakes, or you're John MacArthur, or you're someone like that, and you tell people these things, and then you go to the scriptures that say you're robbing to that verse in Malachi or Micah, and I believe it's Micah, where they are no, it's Malachi. I think it's Malachi chapter 3 actually, and you tell them that they're robbing God, and you take all those things out of context, but you're reaching a large enough audience. Someone is ignorant enough and someone's unlearned enough, sadly, that they're going to be taken advantage of, and they're going to send you that money because you told them and you lied to them and you made them scared, and you upset them, and now they're going to send you money because they're fearing that God is against them. And it's horrible. It's really horrible. And that's where we go when we begin to understand probability and statistics, is that you can either try to reach people in a small way, like Jesus Christ had a small following. There was just a few people that followed Jesus. And that's why, like, when I make these videos, I just hope that I can reach a few people somewhere on this planet, right? But these people who reach large audiences, they begin to take advantage, and they begin to hurt people rather than help them, and because they want to help themselves, and they think that they deserve it. So I hope that this helps. I know this was a lot of new information, and it probably sounds strange, but if you go and watch someone like Stephen Meyer, just type in Stephen Meyer not Stephanie Meyer, who wrote the Twilight series, but Stephen Meyer. I found that out Googling Stephen Meyer. I was like, oh wow, the female version wrote this book, Twilight. So Stephen Meyer is a scientist, and if you go and watch like William Dembski, he's a very interesting character too. William Dembski, Demski, and then Stephen Meyer is Stephen Meyer, Meyer, and of the Discovery Institute. You can find some people who can say this a lot better than I can, but they might not talk about the Bible as much as I do. But I hope this helps, and thanks for taking the time to watch. I'll catch you on the next video. Bye.